Hey y'all, happy baby Friday. I am pleased to, I don't know, for those of y'all that aren't in this area, today is the last day of hurricane season. So we're all celebrating down here. I want to welcome everybody today. I have a very, very special to me guest with us, Miss Amy Anderson. I have known Amy for a while now. We work together at Karen Zupko and Associates as consultants for a while. And I am really, really pleased to have her with us today. So Amy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled and honored to be here.
Now, as we start off, people, as y'all are coming in, just give us a little shout there in the comments and let us know that you're here. And as we start going through things, I see some applause coming up, Amy, some people saying hi that way. So as we go through and we start talking, as normal, I'll do my little interview stuff with Amy so that y'all can get to know her a little better if you aren't familiar with her. But when we start talking about our topic, which is plastics, aesthetics, and just which can be applied to other offices too, some of the stuff we're going to talk about. So if y'all have questions, like usual, just go ahead and start putting them into the chat, and we'll pull them in as we talk about different things today. So for those of y'all who are not familiar with Amy, she is now a co-founder partner with Cheyenne Brinson at BrinsonAnderson Consulting. And she was one that if you'll go to the company and check out her bio, she kind of started early like I did in the business. But she was in offices at 18. She was a pre-med student and was in a plastic surgeon's office back then. So it was kind of like an omen calling for you, huh, Aim?
That's right.
And she has been multiple different areas, front desk, prior authorizations, billing, accounts receivable. So she really has a good understanding of full practice management and how the full practice runs, which is something that I was lucky, in my career to be able to do too. And I think it really gives you a more well-rounded understanding. So it's not all, well, you have to do this to get it paid for coding, and you have to do this for billing, and they kind of tug. Whereas if you kind of do some of everything, you get more of that long eye sight kind of, I think, on a practice. And so she's done kind of all of it too. She has been in private practices. She's managed hospital-based centers, academic centers. I love academics. I loved when I worked in PATH facilities. It's really fun to work with the residents and the students and stuff like that too. I always learned my trick then that if there's food out, you'll get every resident.
That's great advice. You can always attract them with food or sweets.
Yes, because I would be on site doing something for like maybe the neurology division, let's say. So I'm giving a talk and all the residents, because they'd always have food. So residents from all over would end up kind of sneaking in. Oh, what you doing in here? And there is just like, I know the food's over there. Go ahead and take something. And that's kind of what they were checking out. But that's, whatever hook you need, right?
I love it.
But she has an MBA in general studies, an MBA and then a BS from Indiana University. So you went to Indiana University for everything. Is that right, Amy?
That's right. I'm a Hoosier through and through.
Yeah. Well, one of my colleagues, Sonal Patel, who said hi to us. Where did Sonal go? So Sonal Patel, her son recently started college, and he is going to Indiana University. So she has been on campus a couple times with him, and she really likes it. It's a beautiful campus. So yes, we've got a new one coming up. We got a turnover, right?
I love it.
The Hoosiers, they went to the ball game and all that kind of stuff. So so very good. So as we're starting to talk today. I just wanted kind of to do some basic stuff so that people kind of got your background a little bit better and to know maybe kind of how to throw some questions out to you.
Sure.
So with your background and being in various different places and moving around, what besides being in that plastic surgeon's office at 18, like what kind of made you turn and look at healthcare? What interested you about it?
It's such a great question. And I've had to reflect back on, how did I end up here?
As we all do.
Exactly. And it's kind of funny. I was actually just sharing this story the other day with my niece, who is a freshman in college and is already thinking about changing her major. And she's kind of beating herself up saying, I can't believe I'm switching my major already. And I said, listen, I was the person who, when I heard the statistics of everybody changes their major an average of, 2 or 3 times, I said, that is not me. I know exactly what I want to do. I'm so clear on it. And I changed my major before the first semester was over. So I think, we all have a different path that takes us where we're going. And there was just something about healthcare in general. I mean, and even my first major, I was athletic training and pre-physical therapy. So that was already healthcare. I knew I wanted to be around people and helping them, come back from injuries or rehabilitate. And it just didn't feel quite right. And then I switched to nursing for a little while, and my one of my sisters is a nurse, and so I had that as an inspiration. And so I was drawn to helping people that way. And when I got into nursing classes, I have so much respect for nurses, but it became clear to me this isn't the exact type of healthcare I wanted to be in. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to go all in, and officially declared that I was, pre-med and going to do all the pre-med coursework. And during that time, I realized I needed to work as well and make an income. And actually the church that I grew up in, our youth pastor's wife was the OR nurse manager for a plastic surgery group. And she said, I think we need some part-time help in the front office. And if that interests you, and I certainly did not set out looking for plastic surgery or any kind of surgical specialty. I just thought, great, it's a part-time job, answering phones, I can do that. And I guess I can say the rest is history. I worked in that practice all through undergrad, and just early on learned to never say no. When asked to do something or asked to be taught something, yes, I'll do it. I'll learn it. Spent a lot of time in medical records. Yes, before EHRs. I am old enough. I pulled charts. I filed paperwork. That was the majority of my job for quite a while. And then I was offered or asked, I guess, to learn prior authorizations because it was a heavy insurance practice. They did a lot of reconstructive surgery. And I had no idea what I was saying yes to. But I said, sure, I'll do research. And that was even before maybe Availity had just come out, but we really weren't doing pre-certs online. It was, make a phone call or even writing a letter for predetermination. I mean, all of the tedious, long ways of getting things done. But I guess without droning on here, Betty, I'll just say that I pretty much learned every job in the business office, and even got to do a little bit of MA work, a little bit just to improve patients and move people through clinic. But I realized that I loved the business side of healthcare. And so as I got to the end of my bachelor's degree, I just decided I wasn't ready for that long haul commitment for medical school. I was nervous because I changed majors a few times, that what if I get into med school and then don't want to do that? But I knew I had found something that I loved and that I seemed to be pretty good at, being in the business side of it. And so decided to switch routes a little bit and pursued an MBA and have stayed in practices ever since. So just developed that career then in practice management. And that's what I would say is the focus of what I have done and what I'm doing now. It's on all things, practice management related.
Good. And Barb Shaw, she's one of my colleagues. She says she started in nursing school too. I didn't know that, Barb. So that's nice. I think a lot of us, I was actually pre-med myself when I first started, and had a little disagreement with one of my biology professors that kind of ended disastrously for me and just kind of turned me off, which led me to X-ray, so I was an X-ray tech, and it was just too, it was the too touchy-feely, at that age too, when I was younger, I was just like, I don't know, it just, and so that led me, they were like, hey, we got a great job for you, terminology, you have clinical background, you blah, blah, blah. And they kind of moved me into working at a clinic. So, a lot of us, especially us old timers, and Amy, I still don't put you in that thing because you look like such a baby, but we all have some kind of similar jump around. It was over here. And then somebody said, hey, and you kind of just do it. But there's just something you get in the office. I don't know what it is, for those of us that really, stick around. There's nothing like being in an office. I don't know what it is about it. If it's the, the people, the patients that are coming in and what you're doing with them. But I really enjoy my on-site visits now with my clients for that reason, because I love being in an office. Just the energy and everything is going, and people are trying to get everything done, and people are all running around. So it really picks you up when you're in there,
It does. And I think for those of us who, I just feel like I'm a helper. Like that's my nature is I want to help. I don't necessarily want to always be the one telling people what to do. I can do that when I need to. But I like to say I like to help good doctors take care of patients and pretty much take care of everything behind the scenes so they can focus on their patients. And if what I'm doing is giving them peace of mind and focus on doing what only they can do, then I've done my job. And hey, I want them to make a lot of money while they do it, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And so doing it efficiently and being smart about it and always looking for ways to improve and enhance the practice is what really excites me.
Yeah, one of my earlier clinics that I was at, I had 2 infectious disease doctors and 2 surgeons, 2 general surgeons, and they were the best physicians that, just very caring, very nice. It was like the little family kind of thing. We'd always have holiday celebrations, all, we always did things together and would go and go out, and they were the most caring physicians that I've worked with. And that really, that's where my passion for physicians and making sure they get taken care of comes from. So it's that same kind of thing. Especially now, we're looking at this conversion rate for next year, and, you're thinking about that, and they have to be able to get paid appropriately for what they're doing, so that, they can keep in business and keep taking care of patients. They can't get new equipment. They can't get more, they can't do those things if every time they turn around, everything's getting slashed. So I think those of us that are not only that work in the practices for them, that have their backs, but they're also overworked. So pulling in people like us, that have that passion for them, to make sure that they're getting what they need and what they deserve, which is, I think, more for me. I'm like, no, you did this work. You should be paid for it. Don't feel bad about, but maybe it was just a 3, you have those kind of discussions with them, and just looking how the practice runs. A lot of physicians I have found, And if you found otherwise, but I don't think you'd be doing what you do now, Amy, if this was true, a lot of them are not good business people.
Correct.
That's not what they did.
Right.
They came into it to treat patients, to take care of people, to help them out, and so they, business classes, you don't see them through their med schools. It's not like they're teaching them how to run a practice at every medical school.
Right.
They kind of just throw them out there. If you don't want to come to work for us now, after they are in residency, if they decide to go on their own, they're really kind of on their own at first. And some of them don't make really great decisions at first because they have no clue.
Right. Right.
So
it's true. And I quite a bit of what I've been doing in the last several years is helping docs start new practices from scratch. And, undoubtedly we'll get a couple months into it and, they're aware enough to say, I need some help. There's a lot I don't know. And then there'll be a point they'll say, oh my gosh, Amy, I can't believe all the stuff I didn't know. Like, what would I have done? And not that there's any like secret sauce I was teaching them. It was just bringing them some awareness. They're so focused on the clinical side, and often starting a practice, they're thinking how I want to care for my patients and my flow of caring for patients, and maybe some marketing things that they have their eye on, and not thinking about all the thousands of other tasks and systems that go into place, to make the practice work. And so you're right. It's usually very eye-opening, but exciting. And for the right physician who is entrepreneurial and really wants to be the boss and wants to make those decisions and is prepared to have an equally demanding administrative role as they are clinically focused, it can really be a beautiful thing. But it's not to be underestimated how much goes into it.
Yes. Yeah. When I first started in my career, it was back in the day before we had HMOs, before we had PPOs. Wow. So back then it was a lot easier for physicians to kind of say, okay, I'm going to do this. And there wasn't as much of all of the administrative stuff that had to be done. They still needed to do some of it, but it wasn't as much as it is today. And it wasn't prior authorization crazy like it is today. And, back then we'd have patients that would come in, they would see one of our doctors, they would pay for their visit, and we would give them an encounter form, a super bill, and say, all you need to do is staple this to your claim form and send it off to your insurance to get paid back. It was easy. It was beautiful, unless they were Medicare, or Medicaid, of course. But those were the only two things that were around where people were taking discounts and having to participate and all that kind of stuff. And then as that started to come around, and, a lot of physicians, I think, lost their shirts when HMOs first started. They signed every contract that came across their desk because it sounded like a great deal. You're going to pay me this much money for every patient every month, whether I see them or not, and they would get into these things and not really go through it. And, it was hard. When people started really getting the downside of those HMOs. But nowadays, to start a practice, I think a physician, unless they're joining into a small group, would really struggle to do it on their own, and that's where, you and Cheyenne at BrinsonAnderson come in with what you help them do, right?
Yes. Everything, it's a lot of, operationally setting up the practice, but to your point, even when it comes to insurance contracting, for the plastic surgeons that I work with, I just had a conversation yesterday with two female surgeons that are opening a practice in Florida, which those of us who work we know it's some of the worst reimbursements in the country in Florida. And I said, you guys get all the sunshine, so therefore you don't get paid well, I guess, for the work you do. But we had to have a very honest conversation about, if they decide to go in network, what does this mean? And they asked, should we at least just start with Medicare? because, we can get all these skin cancers. And I said, let's do an experiment. And I pulled up the Medicare fee schedule, and, we found a malignant lesion excision code and a layered repair. And it came out to, around $500, a little less. And they had a moment of, and they go, that's probably, and, conservatively we'd book an hour for that visit. And then we'd have the post-op care, we have the staff, we have the suture, we have the supplies. And so they haven't made their decision yet, but I think they needed to see and be realistic about, this is what the reimbursement is. And in Florida, Medicare is often your best payer. And so your contract from Florida Blue and others are going to be less than that. And so they're tough decisions to make. But to your point of, docs in the past signing HMOs without really reading it, I just want them to understand. I don't want to sway them necessarily, but I want them to be fully informed before they make these decisions, because once you go down that path, it's a whole lot more challenging to change directions.
Definitely. And I'm sorry, y'all. I just want to say earlier, for some reason, people's comments were not showing to me. So I normally kind of call a couple people out that are joining us. And I didn't do that this time because nobody was showing. I don't know why, but now things are starting to pop up. So I just want to say that lady, she's one of my frequent watchers, a nice colleague and friend of mine. So Lady's joining us. So hey, Lady. We got Cassie in here. So hey, Cassie. And I did see that Bertram Lancico also was joining in for us, and I will be on his Renown Revenue Cycle Roundup. I know, Bertram, I butchered the name of that, but I'll be on that on the 13th to speak with him. So I just wanted to tell everybody, and Shelly, I see that you're there too. So I just want to say hey to some people and let y'all know that I wasn't trying to be rude or ignore you, but it wasn't coming up. So, but that, that bugs me when I, so I had to say something.
Yeah.
All right. So with what you do now, like just give a quick rundown, because that works into the topic we're discussing. Like, what do you, what are the things that you do for practices now?
So there's a couple different buckets. One of them is the new practice startup that I was just kind of talking about. And that really is a white glove service, if you will, of from the time they say they want to start a practice to getting open. And in plastics, I would say I tell them to plan on about 6 months. The number one thing that influences that is the real estate. Do they have a location? How much construction is required? Because that can change it from 6 months to a year, depending on construction and just all the delays. I don't do that piece of it. Have different people I could refer to depending on where you are in the country. But finding an office, getting a lease signed, and getting it renovated is a giant piece of it. And so, what I'm doing is really helping them while that's all underway. We're going through everything else with starting up the business, getting their business license, getting all of the insurances that they need, meaning, not just malpractice, but their business liability insurance, their workers' comp, their, all those other policies that need to be in place. Going through setting up fees. If they're doing insurance, of course, getting them going on all of their contracting and credentialing. Setting their fee schedule. For cosmetic fees, we'll often do some price shopping to see what what's the going rate in the area, and kind of work through understanding what their brand is and where do they want to position themselves. What are we going to charge for those out-of-pocket services? What else? We get involved in marketing, working with a web vendor. We don't do websites, but we'll partner with the web vendor and be give input into how to structure their digital marketing campaigns. And then a lot of it is really the workflows. So we're developing scripting for how the desk is going to answer the phone. What does the schedule template need to look like? When are we going to see new patients and pre-ops and post-ops? And then just every step of the process from, patient intake, seeing them in clinic. And then again, if there's insurance billing, what's what's our process for entering, charges? Is the doctor doing it? Are they still using paper super bills? Who's going to actually do the billing and the AR follow-up? So really every piece of it, everything that needs to be done, we're going to walk them through it, help them make decisions. And of course, we have a lot of templates and tools that we're going to give them along the way. We don't need to reinvent the wheel with every practice.
Right.
So that's really the kind of the overall new practice startup portion.
So what kind of things, in your opinion, makes a successful aesthetic or plastic practice, or any practice actually for that matter? I just know that we're concentrating more on the plastics aesthetics today.
I've been giving this thought, and because often I don't think it's necessarily the surgical skills. Obviously that's important. I'm kind of assuming a foundational competency and that they're a good doctor, a good surgeon. So beyond that, it's really, I think it's about a personal brand. And what I mean is, developing a name for yourself. And the physicians that are the most engaged. And I don't necessarily mean that they're all over Instagram and TikTok and, necessarily doing the silly dances and things. But I think it's about being authentic to who you are, building relationships with patients, with other physicians, being just part of your community. And that can be a tough one because it's a slow build, right? It's not like I can dump $10,000 into a marketing budget and then turn on the faucet of patients, right? You build this over time, but the most successful ones are building it over time, and they are, committed to treating people well, doing the right thing, being accessible. And even the little things, I still say things like, you need to send a letter back to the referring doctor, and not because then you can charge a consultation. It's just like, it's the right thing to do. It's the kind thing to do. Or even, hey, personally call the doctor and say, hey, I saw that patient you sent over. Thanks so much. I just wanted to give you an update. We're in such a connected society now that through texting and phone calls, there's really no reason to not do that. A lot of my plastic surgeons, I shouldn't say a lot, a few of them who listen to my advice will still handwrite a thank you note after somebody comes in for a cosmetic consultation. How often do we get a handwritten note in the mail, Betty? Like, we don't anymore. It's special. It's meaningful. Yes. And so it's those little touches, I think, that tie into connecting with people and building a relationship that really go a long way. And the most successful practices I see are doing that in a variety of different ways.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice. And I think you're right. It's something that kind of got lost. And some of it, I think, started where people got kind of scared. Because I remember back in the day, my ID doctors that I was talking about earlier, they were the only ID doctors that were around. And because there weren't a lot of them back then, and that's when HIV started getting prevalent. Mm-hmm. And so they were very sought after, and they were very good. But they would get, at Christmas time, just the giant baskets and all kind of stuff from, physicians that were, had referred patients to us, what good care they took of their patients. And we, of course, were sending just the giant ones back out. But then when the whole Stark and into kickback and all that, then everybody got scared,
right?
To start sending these things back and forth. So all of a sudden it was just like, nope, you can't, no, can't do nothing. We don't want to do anything. We don't want to get in trouble. So I think some of it, they got kind of scared of doing those things that maybe they were doing. And our doctors really weren't doing it for business, because we had more than enough. We had all the business we could handle. So it really was like a thank you, a nice thing, a gesture from them. But I think some of it stopped with that kind of stuff where they were just scared. They didn't know what they could and couldn't do, what they could and couldn't say. So I think now that we've been having these laws for a while, and people are more used to them, and they know, okay, well, we can't send $1,000 gift card over there to say thank you, but we can send a note, and we can, so they're more comfortable with kind of the parameters. And I think that goes a far, far way with building those relationships with people, because there are so many, unless you're in a specific area where you're there are a lot of specialists in, an area that, in fact, we were talking yesterday, where you've got a lot of other practices now that are doing aesthetic kind of med spa type things that are like general practitioners. And, they see that, they think it's going to be a good addition to the practice. So it's like you see them popping up in different practices now. And so patients and physicians that are referring people, they can pretty much take their pick of where they want to send people. They don't have to send them to you. So any little thing like that you can do, it hits that person that receives it in a different way. It's it means something. So I think that's good. And on top of that shade, it's also the office staff, which leads me into that issue about getting the right person in the right position in the office, because you could have the best physician, but if the office staff people are a nightmare to be in, the patients aren't going to come in. So how do y'all kind of go about doing that, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's probably the number one sore spot in most practices is staffing. And you said it, getting the right person into the right position. And so with our new practices, we're helping them find and hire those team members. For existing practices, as we kind of assess, who's in what role, we often find gaps. And I'm not the hatchet man. I'm never coming in saying that person's got to go. Often, though, we're finding, we have a deficiency, whether it's in training or you just truly need another person. And so finding that right person. It's tough, Betty. It's so tough. You cannot hire too quickly. And that's so much easier said than done. When you're a small business, which many medical practices are, maybe you have 5 to 10 employees. 10 would be big in some of these solo practice settings. When one person's gone, you feel that gap. Some of my docs only have 2 employees. If one person's gone, you're incredibly vulnerable. And so the reality is sometimes we do have to hire quickly because we just can't keep the doors open otherwise. But the danger in that is we settle for people who we know. And the thing is, we know during the interview. I often say that interviewing is like dating, right? There's some great people out there, but that they're just not for you. And if you try to pretend they're for you, and then you get into this relationship with them, and then one day you go, what am I thinking? They're not the right fit. And so we have to listen to our gut when we're going through the interview process. I've learned the hard way that anytime I wave off a red flag, or maybe just a yellow flag, like, I didn't love that, but it's okay. It always comes back to bite me. I go, I knew better, but I was kind of desperate, right? We really wanted someone. And so I think being thorough in the interview process, getting other people involved, I don't ever like to just have one person interviewing. So with our clients, we'll do the first round of interviews. We do them on video because I want to see them. I want to hear the interaction, not just on a phone call. I insist that the doctors meet them in person. And I insist if there's anybody else on the staff, I want them to meet and give input, because it's a team and they're all going to be working together. And sometimes the person you least expect will pick up on some nuance, or they'll be shadowing for a little bit and they'll share some crazy story that makes you go, oh my goodness, I don't think we want to, bring this drama into the practice. So having multiple people involved, and I don't mean stringing it out weeks on end, but having a few touch points before offering. I don't believe in making an offer at the first interview, and certainly not can you start now? Can you start tomorrow? Like, we need to have a little bit of buffer time in there.
Yeah, I think that's good. Would you advise then if you have a practice, have you ever, put out there or give advice that if they are in that, you've only got two people, one of them's left, and now, we're kind of desperate, but we don't want to get somebody in here that, is going to, in 2 weeks, not show up anymore and then have to start again. Do you recommend staffing agencies in situations like that? I mean, have you gone that route? Do you find that that's helpful as a stopgap?
Yeah, I've worked with a few. I think it depends on the position. I think for a medical assistant, can be helpful, and I mean this with all due respect, because I immensely respect what MAs do. But if it is I need a person, a warm body to move a patient through the practice and capable of taking vital signs and handing out I can't expect them to schedule a surgery probably on day one. They're not going to know the intricacies. I can't expect them to know every aspect of my EHR. But if it's somebody to guide a patient through the office, that can be helpful. It's really hard to teach somebody the schedule. Most practices have pretty complex schedules. So that front desk role is challenging. We, in select practices, we have a couple members on our team that have pitched in as like a virtual receptionist or a virtual patient care coordinator. Usually we have to already have a relationship with the practice and know enough about them. And so, the beauty of technology is with phone systems, you can be anywhere in the world and answer the phone and have the schedule in front of you. And if you're knowledgeable of the doctor and the procedures and the diagnoses, the patient doesn't necessarily know that you're not sitting there in the office. And so, we've been able to plug some gaps like that. But it's tough. And yeah, sometimes it is staffing agencies. Who else do we know? Maybe that stayed home, left the workforce after having a baby or something. Maybe she wants to come back a few hours, just to help us out in a pinch. I mean, we get very creative, and often, if there's a manager in the practice, they kind of know they're the gap filler, whatever needs to be done. They're now wearing, all of those different hats to make ends meet until we can refill the position.
Yeah, well, and that I was watching, I know you, for those of y'all that are watching too, if you follow Amy or check her out on LinkedIn, she also has little videos that she will post that are nice and short things, but about different subjects. About when you had one, and that's what made me think about that right person, kind of thing, was that you made a little one about hiring people and, giving tips with the resumes and checking on them and things like that, down to ones that I saw about chairs, right? Exam chairs.
Yes.
So, for those of y'all that are looking for like little quick hits of advice for practice managing and things for the office, make sure you follow Amy. I'll put her information up a little bit later with her LinkedIn profile on there. Because you do some nice little videos that are just very pointed and very good advice for practical things like that people, especially for new practices, might be going, I don't even know where to look for this. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. So I just wanted to tell you, I really like your videos. Are they, what gives you the idea for like, oh, I need to make one about this? Is it like some client that you feel the need for, and then you thought, oh, that would be a good, little fit?
That's exactly it. I mean, the ideas, it's usually like, I just said that same thing 3 times in 1 week. Clearly this isn't, and I'll make a note of it. And then I'll just, put up my iPhone and do a little video. I'll tell you, I've been pushed a little bit to make the content. And now that I'm doing it, it's fun, but it's a lot of work. It's more than most people realize. And a little nerve-wracking in the beginning, but I had somebody tell me it's like going to the gym and building a muscle. Those first few times you're sore and it's uncomfortable and you feel funny, and then after a while you kind of get into the groove of it. So, but yeah, I really am just picking out things that are coming at me every day in practices, and I appreciate you saying that they're just practical and real, because that's what I'm all about. I mean, I've worked in so many practices. None of us want theory. None of us want, this seems like a good idea. We want to know what works. We want to know the fastest way to get something done, maybe the most affordable way to get something done. And we don't have time to try 10 different ways or go shopping on 10 different websites. We just want to know, what do I need to buy, or how do I need to do this process, and give me that advice. So that's what my focus is, just being very practical and clear.
And you were very successful. So I just want to let you know, I want to throw that in there, that I really do like watching those. Now with aesthetics and plastics, also I would have this issue in pediatric offices. The question always we had about consultation fees. Should you charge a consultation fee? And now I'm not talking about for a therapeutic kind of thing. We all know that those are valid things to get. But when you're looking more like in pediatrics, this practice that I ran, we would have patients that would come in and want to just talk with it. They were still expecting, they hadn't had the baby yet. So they wanted to see if they think, I honestly, we had women that would come in and say, I want to come in because I want to see if I think my baby would like the practice. And I'm like, oh, okay. And they would come, and then we'd find that they had been to like 4 other practices and were, so it was like, well, and they would want to talk to everybody and look at everything and have these in-depth conversations. And the physicians always struggled because it was like, well, we can't bill the insurance for that. Right. There's no medical necessity there, but we're spending a lot of time that I could be spending with a patient that I could get paid for. So, if we charge a consultation fee, they're always afraid that then the patient won't come in. Right. And in the pediatric one, it was a little different because then they were looking for an insurance long-term thing. Whereas with aesthetics, you're more looking at things that they're going to pay for themselves, out of pocket kind of stuff. Right. So I'm sure that fear, when I've been in plastics offices, is kind of like the same thing, and they struggle with that. What's your advice on that whole consultation fee thing?
Yes, I am a believer in the consultation fee. I think our doctors are worth it. I think their time is worth it, and it's worth so much more than what we usually even charge. But I think there's just some of the human psychology of, we value things that have a price associated with it, and we take for granted, or we take advantage of, things that are free. Right or wrong, it's just kind of human nature. And I'll tell you, one of the main reasons I charge a consultation fee, and I charge it at the time of booking the appointment, is I found it to be the best way to eliminate no-shows. Because I have your $100 or your $200 that you've paid, people tend to remember that, and they're going to call if they can't make the appointment. And so I found it to be the most effective way to reduce no-shows. And then, in aesthetics, we do have the option to say it's a $100, $200 consultation fee, and we will apply it to a service if you proceed with treatment. And then it essentially is free. But it's only free if they become a patient and move forward. And most practices, that works very well. I have very few patients that push back, and we kind of say, if they're not willing to pay the fee, they're probably not willing to pay for the treatments either. And so we have other resources. They can read about treatments online. They can watch videos. They can even talk on the phone with the patient care coordinator. But the time with the doctor is valuable. And I'm saying doctor, I mean, it could be advanced practice providers as well, right? In aesthetics, we have a lot of PAs, NPs, in some states, RNs, doing injectables and other treatments, and their time is worthwhile too. So I'm extending that to all of our providers. I do think their time is worthwhile, and I 100% recommend a consultation fee.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think the fee is the biggest thing to help with the no-show issue. I remember similarly, when HMOs first started to come out, there was no copay when they came in the office. If they had the HMO, they came in and it was nothing. And so we would get, and at that time I was working at this pediatrics office, and it was a busy office, So on Mondays, we would get a jillion calls from HMO patients wanting their kids to be seen because they looked weird this weekend, or they sneezed yesterday, or they, because it didn't cost them anything. They all wanted to come in.
Right.
And one lady, she thought her kid looked funny. And now I would never say this to a patient, but I was like, well, maybe you just have a funny looking kid. Like, I don't know what to tell you. But as soon as the HMOs put $5 copays on those, that stopped. As soon as they had to pay just $5 to come in for those kind of things, then they would think about it. So I think that is a solid point about having the consultation fee. Because if you've got a lot of those booked and half of them no show, then you are sitting around, and that's wasted time that could be spent on patient care that you're getting paid for. So anybody out there that is looking at that consultation fee, both of us are like thumbs up on it. But if you have any questions, like I said, I'm seeing a lot of clapping hands and thumbs up on the LinkedIn screen. So I think most people are agreeing with us on that. And then are there I know, there's a bajillion EHR systems out there too, right? So are there ones that you would, for plastics and aesthetics, is there like certain ones? And I know neither one of us, by the way, neither one of us like get paid from any one of these to give recommendations. And you have to look at your own practice. I know, for example, with my derm practices, a lot of them, Emma ortho practices, Emma ENT practices, a lot of them use Emma, by ModMed. They have the specific ones, and they were specifically minded for those specs. And they do pretty well for them. Is there, in the plastics aesthetic side, have you found that there's a system that kind of is like one that was set up toward that specialty, or is it just like you have to find just whatever works for you?
Right. No, there definitely are a few core EHRs that were designed for plastic surgery. My first criteria is they do have to have the ability to create a quote or an estimate. This is plastic surgery. We're giving quotes for aesthetic procedures or treatments. And so if you go with one that doesn't have that capability, you're creating a quote on a Microsoft Word or Excel document. And I can do that and I can make it look pretty, but I can't report on it. I can't track it easily. Like, I'm creating all this other manual workflow. So Nextech is one. Modernizing Medicine is another. It does have a quoting tool. Simplast I like as well. There's a couple others out there, but those are probably the top three that I'm seeing. Other features that they can do are packages. So if there's any med spa component, we tend to sell laser treatments in packages. We sell facials in packages. And so it's on the PM side, a way to sell 5 services, but indicate, as where, did I do that?
I know. I was like, where did that come from?
That was strange. But it will count down the number of services that are used as we bill out one component of the package each time. So it, financially keeps track of things really well. And all of those systems differentiate between a payment and a prepayment. And so even just to say, these are prepayments, these are services not yet provided, right? This is money on the account, but it's not just a credit that's not been applied. It's a prepayment for a future service. And just from different, financial management, I want to know that number. I mean, technically it's a liability for the practice because we owe you something. We owe you a service or we owe you a refund. And so I want that, segmented out from my other payments. The other important piece I would say is if the plastic surgery practice is going to do any insurance billing. They all can do it, but I would be looking at ModMed or Nextech. And probably Nextech is the one I use the most, the one that's most common in practices, because it does have a robust revenue cycle management system and can handle all the intricacies of both the insurance side and the cosmetic side.
Good. And that led me to remind me again of one of your other little videos. And this is something that would be applicable to any kind of practice, is that credit issue, you know, because I hear this a lot from different practices where, you know, when they're running their AR, if they run their AR, you know, they get to where all of the, you know, minuses are and nothing's ever done with it. They just, it sits there and sits there and sits there. When you see that at one of your practices, how do you advise them? Because I know people that are listening, I know they have this in their practices. I see it all the time.
Yeah. We have to work those credit balances. It's such a huge opportunity. And like I said, it's a liability to the practice. Sometimes we just have to clean it up, right? It just, nothing's wrong, but the payment just didn't get linked to the invoice or the claim. And we just need to apply those two. But without doing that, sometimes depending on your system and how the ARs run, your AR may be way higher than you realize because those credit balances are subtracting from the overall number. So that's first and foremost. I want to make sure I have a true understanding of what my AR is. And then two, clean up those accounts, and then to start looking at, are there patients with credits that have been on here for a long time? And what can I do about it? And my first instinct is not, we owe them a refund. I want to get them back in. Like, is this an opportunity to recall them? And I could apply this in both aesthetics and in a medical practice, because, you know, usually there's a reason to come back. Most of our practices are not a one and done type of situation. Right. And so it can be an opportunity just to say, you know, are they due for a follow-up? Are they due for another treatment? Is there a reason, you know, a viable reason we can reach out to them and get them to come back in? And that goes back to what we said earlier about relationships. This whole thing is about building relationships with our patients and retaining them in the practice. And what better way than to say, you know, hi, Betty, this is Amy from Dr. Smith's office. I was going through your account and I saw you had a little bit of a credit here. Would love to invite you to come back in for, you know, insert name of treatment. You know, would you like to do that before the holidays? And, you know, even if usually there's not enough credit to cover the whole treatment. So it's also, you know, generating more revenue. They're going to come in, use the credit, buy some new things. And, you know, hopefully then we'll get them scheduled for their next visit before they leave. So, but yes, the unapplied credits is a huge thing. And practices that are ever considering selling, whether it's to private equity, whether it's to another physician, whether it's bringing in a partner, that is also going to affect the value of the practice. And being able to demonstrate, I had a practice that was going through due diligence with private equity, and that's when they uncovered all of these credit balances. And so the initial offer from private equity changed once they started getting in deeper and they saw all of these liabilities. And a lot of it was just bookkeeping. And we were like, well, hang on. We can clean these up. But so much better to clean them up proactively and all the time. And so, yeah, there's just so many different reasons why it's important to manage those credits. And if you do it on a monthly basis, it usually is, you know, pretty manageable. If you haven't done it for years, you might have a little bit of a hole to crawl out of. But I would say just start piecing it out and tackling a little bit each week until you get through them all.
Yeah, that's great. Now we've got just a few minutes left. So I want to ask you, because I think this is another thing that not only applies to aesthetics and plastics, but you could use it for other practices, is about your secret shoppers. Yeah. So how do y'all do that?
Sure. Well, I love that you asked about this, Betty, because it's one of my favorite things I like to do and offer to practices. And you're right, it applies to any specialty. So we know that first experience with the practice is crucial for any patient or prospective patient. And, you know, how our front office team is answering the phone, how are they responding to that lead that comes in from the website? And, you know, doctors usually aren't around to hear it themselves, or they might, you know, hear things in passing. And often this will come to me as a phone call to say, Amy, I just don't know that my front desk is up to snuff on their customer service. You know, can you work with them on their phone skills? So we start with doing secret shopping. We'll place a series of phone calls, and then we'll go online to their website and fill out that contact form. And we have a detailed questionnaire that we kind of rate each aspect of the call and that email experience, in terms of their customer service, their knowledge of the procedure that we're asking about. Did they ask us for our name? Did they seem interested in me as a person? Or was the impression they're just trying to get off the phone as quickly as possible? Did they offer an appointment? Just various things that we kind of go down our list and rate each of those. And then, when it's all done, we kind of summarize it and give kind of a grade, a score of how they're doing. And there's always opportunity. And then I like to present it to the team and kind of do an hour training session with them. And always in a very positive. I don't ever want to beat people up, or, because sometimes when they feel like, oh, you secret shopped me, they get a little weirded out about it. But it's always in the context of, we can always do better. We're always looking to incrementally improve. And so we want to create these amazing experiences for our patients that when they call this office, they go, wow, like that's like no other doctor's office. I feel like you actually know me, or I feel like you actually care about me. I don't know any physician who doesn't want that to be the experience in their practice. And that crosses all specialties. And so, working through, there's little things that we can teach and do. And it goes back to hiring the right person. You need the person on the phone to actually care about people, to be, naturally answering the phone with a smile in their voice, to be genuinely concerned, as appropriate. And so we use the secret shopping to kind of set the baseline of how are we doing now. We'll do some training, and then we'll do a couple more secret shopper calls a few weeks later, just to see if it sticks and see where there might be some ongoing opportunities.
Yeah. You always have to check back. It's just like when we audit physicians, you do it, you educate them, and then you got to check, in another few. That's why we do it, a couple times a year. Right. You got to make sure, they're continuing on that path.
Absolutely.
But yes, see, I told you the hour is just about up, Amy.
Flew by.
So, and I want to tell you, a couple of the people were making comments that they were very impressed with your knowledge. So I wanted to kind of put that there. So Lady and Molly, thank you for those comments for Amy. Now, as I said before, y'all, if you want to connect with Amy on LinkedIn, here is her LinkedIn profile. We'll also put it in the chat so you can see it later. If you come back, you don't have to go searching for the recording where in it we put it up. But then you can see all of her lovely videos and her posts and stuff and connect with her.
And I love getting ideas. So if you want to see a video on any topic, send me a DM. I'm always accepting ideas.
And her company is BrinsonAnderson Consulting. So there is the link to her website. So if y'all want to go check out what our company does about some of the things we talked about today, if you think that your physicians, your practice could benefit from some of the stuff we were talking about, or of some physicians that are looking to go on their own or start a practice up, I can tell you, I worked with Amy, like I said, for some time at Karen Zupko and Associates. And so I've known Amy for a little while. And also Cheyenne was working at KZA with us at the same time. So, I personally know both of those ladies, and they are wonderful, wonderful people, easy to work with, just genuine, nice, competent, which is always real important in our field. So I would highly, highly recommend them to help if your practice is looking for some help. And the last thing I want to say for today is that I will be speaking at the AHIMA Virtual Medical Coding Summit on December 8th, is next Friday. They haven't had one for quite a while, so I was very honored to get chosen to speak. Sue Bowman is also going to be speaking, a couple, heavy hitters in there. I'm going to be talking about documentation for evaluation and management for MDM. So if you want to go there, you can check out the link and see who's on the agenda. And if it's something that you would like to attend, it's from AHIMA. So there are CEUs that will be available for the summit if you attend it. So Amy, again, thank you so much. It was so fun to catch up with you and have you here on the program. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Loved being here, and so great catching up with you again, Betty. Mwah.
All right, y'all. So we will have another session. I'm not sure. We will have one more session probably for the year, a broadcast. And hopefully, I haven't told her yet, but I know Sonal's on right now. So Sonal, I would like for you and I to come back and do our last quarterly open question thing for people. So that might be what you see from us next week, when we should have done one. I didn't do one last Thursday because it was Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. So the next one should have been next Thursday, but I will be at the NAMUS conference next week. So I won't be able to, do a live broadcast. It would just be too much. And I'll be like involved in learning a bunch of new stuff. So it will be sometime in December. So thanks for joining us, y'all. Appreciate your time. And we will see you next time to see, whoops, let me get my thing up here, to see what is happening in healthcare. Thanks, y'all.
Bye.